Welcome to the Fantasy Throwdown Podcast, bringing you the latest updates from the world of sports, gambling, and pop culture. Because you can't have a show without hot takes or a Tiger King meme these days. Know what I'm saying? Now, with over 200 episodes and ready to get after it again, here's your host, Dwayne Callender.
Show, everyone. Gonna talk March Madness a bit further and go into the brackets in general, but first let's just kind of talk about overall favorites, and again the fact that March Madness this year will take place strictly in Indianapolis, so just one central region, no traveling outside of the teams getting into the bubble essentially, and of course, none of these teams are going to be allowed to compete initially unless they've got a negative test for 7 days in a row. If they can't field the full roster of players, then there are going to be replacement teams on standby that the selection committee already has in place. So Louisville being the first standby team available. So again, you have teams that normally would have been in the NIT, like Louisville, are basically waiting on standby in the interim of teams dropping out of this thing. And just to be fair, there is a very real chance that there could be a team that runs into an issue beforehand that gets dropped for the tournament. So I'm just saying, this tournament is still subject to change ahead of Friday. Now, once the tournament starts, there are no substitute teams coming in. So if a team flunks the test and they have a spread, they're going to be eliminated, and you're going to get teams advancing on a bye, essentially. And that's just the way it's going to play out. So with that being said, let's get right down to it in terms of the overall favorites. Top seed, Gonzaga, overall number 1, 26-0, obviously undefeated. First undefeated team since Kentucky in 2015. Try to be the first undefeated team to win the NCAA tournament since Indiana in 1976. So, yeah, we've had a lot of times since the last true undefeated team, and Gonzaga really has earned this seed. To be perfectly blunt, if Mark Few can't get it done this year with the Zags, and they're the overall favorite, plus 220 Vegas odds to win it all, and by statistical measures, they're bordering near 30% chance of winning this tournament, which is extremely high, even compared to most years. Most years you get teams around a 25-26% chance of winning the tournament. This year, Gonzaga being at 30%, that's a bit eye-opening. But if you look at the offensive metrics and the KenPom stats, it is the highest-rated offensive team by any stretch of the imagination in NCAA history from an offensive standpoint. They've got 3 All-American candidates in Corey Crisper, Drew Timme, Jalen Suggs. Realistically, they spread the ball around, and it's one of the rarities is the fact that the Bulldogs make almost 64% of their 2-point shots, which, even by NBA marks is absurd. When you look at the NBA and college games, teams aren't even getting 50% averages now with the 2-point shot. And it's partly, I think, because of the proliferation of teams just jacking up 3-pointers. They don't even take quality 2-point shots anymore, which is kind of leading to the decline of the 2-point percentages. But, when you do the statistical math, teams will say that, if you hit the 3-point shot and you're hitting it at above a 35% clip, your expected value is still going to be higher than the 2-point shot. Zags are excellent from 3-point range, and they shoot at an absurd percentage from 2-point range, as I noted. That's why they have the highest offensive efficiency marks in the history of the KenPom statistic, which has been in place for over 25 years now. I just look at Gonzaga. It's very hard to pick apart anything wrong with this team. And truth be told, I kind of look at this as a case where, it's going to take one of these other teams to knock them off. I don't really see a whole lot in the West region to trouble Gonzaga, just being honest, because, realistically in the region, I just don't see it. The numbers just don't play out where I see a whole lot giving Gonzaga trouble. Iowa's the number 2 seed, headlined by Luka Garza. I've always been down on Iowa this year. I think if you can give Garza trouble, Iowa's a pretty simple team to figure out, in my opinion. If they hit their 3-point shots, yeah, they're going to do damage. If Garza is allowed to feast in the middle, yeah, you're going to be in trouble. I just think that Garza is a guy you can get into foul trouble if you got size and being able to position against him. Plus, the potential matchup against Oregon in the second round is not one where I actually think favors Iowa in the West. So I'm just kind of looking at it and saying, in the West region, you do have a couple of situations where I could see some upsets happening, and again, it's to the benefit of Gonzaga, because I don't really see a ton of these teams giving Gonzaga that much of a difficult stretch to run. I could be wrong, obviously, but I just kind of look at the amongst the regions. I think the likely scenarios Gonzaga goes through. Kansas is the dark horse in all of this. Kansas, we don't exactly know who is going to be available. I kind of have Kansas in as one of my surprise picks, just because I know sometimes Gonzaga picks, depending on the size of your pool, you may need to get a little bit more varied. And again, I talked about this before. When I'm saying varied, I'm talking about when you're getting pools larger than 100 people. That's when you have to start getting a little bit more creative with the picks and going a little bit sideways. When you've got overwhelming favorite like Gonzaga at 30% chance to win the tournament, taking them out before the Final Four doesn't really do you a whole lot of good in the grand scheme of things. Yeah, it could have worked out, certainly. But when their percentages of winning it all are that high and getting to the Final Four is significantly higher than other teams, because if you're looking at it objectively, you're getting a chance of Gonzaga making the Final Four greater than 50%, which no other team has available, just because of how the West lines up for Gonzaga. I just don't really see a great play of picking against them just for the sake of saying you made the pick. So, as I kind of look through the West region, I like Gonzaga. Kansas is the dark horse. Virginia as a 4 seed. Yeah, they could certainly do it with their play style, but I don't necessarily see Virginia as the matchup that takes out Gonzaga. I'm very curious about this Creighton team, because Creighton at the 5 seed, I look at this as a classic 5-12 matchup. Creighton was awful in the Big East tournament final, and that was really the first game back for Coach McDermott after his very controversial comments that came out that led to his suspension about his team getting back on a plantation. No matter what he was trying to say, everyone knows that was inappropriate to say. But the fact that the team did not even remotely respond in a big game for the Big East title, I got some concerns about Creighton. Just because when you play that poorly against a Georgetown team that, I don't really consider to be very good, as much as I like Patrick Ewing, I just look at it as a standpoint of this is a team that's not in the best shape heading into the tournament, and the Gauchos have won a ton of games. They shoot well from the 3-point range. Creighton doesn't necessarily defend well from the 3-point range. I'm not feeling that confident of Creighton being able to hold off a 12-5 upset with this uncertainty surrounding Greg McDermott. It's just very, like I said, it was a terrible performance, and no one really can put their finger on what was the cause. So it leaves the elephant in the room of it's the coach, and the players are trying to get past the controversy surrounding the coach. So I'm probably going to have a little bit more favor on that 5-12 upset than I would in normal years. All right, so getting into the other half of the bracket where, as I said, in Gonzaga's top half of the bracket, outside of Virginia, I don't really see any of these teams being capable of knocking off Gonzaga. I mean, yeah, you have an 8-9 matchup between Oklahoma and Missouri. That's probably going to be the tightest matchup of the first round, to be honest. Really splitting hairs between, the Tigers get their points in just kind of crashing the boards, getting garbage points. Oklahoma, realistically, that plays into their strengths. I just kind of look at Oklahoma as a team where you're not really gonna be you're not gonna be bullying them inside. They've got a very good defense. Even though in the latter half of the year it did tail off a bit, I just kind of look at Oklahoma in that Missouri matchup. It's a coin flip at best, but neither matchup, in my opinion, works all that great against Gonzaga. And the other part of some of the issues with Oklahoma is that they did have some positive tests that threw off because they lost some of their point guard play between Austin Reeves and Alondas Williams. I kind of struggle with picking anyone against Gonzaga in this side of the bracket because I just don't see anything of interest, to be perfectly honest. So let's flip it around to the other half of the bracket in the West. You've got USC as the 6th seed playing the playing game winner of Wichita State and Drake. I think it'll be Wichita State, but wouldn't be shocked if Drake pulled off the win in that first 4 matchup. Pretty evenly matched teams. On the USC side, the player to watch is Evan Mobley. Big time center. Probably is going to be a top 3 pick in the NBA draft this upcoming year. Good defender, good rebounder. Averages 16-9 a game. Really going to be a name to look out for in the next couple of years in the NBA because he can put up big numbers as a big man. Excellent passer. should be interesting to watch. I'm not even gonna try to upsell any further, but I think Mobley is probably going to be one of the players to watch that people are going to be learning a lot more about throughout the course of the NCAA tournament. So, as my talking about this team goes, where I'm leaning. It's I got USC over Wichita State and the Drake winner, and it sets up an interesting second round matchup. I think Kansas gets past Eastern Washington. I don't see it 13-4. I mean, a 14-3 upset in the first round here. Kansas, we don't know who's playing yet, and we're not going to know until Thursday evening, most likely, when they'll make an announcement as to which of Kansas players actually qualified to be inside the bowl. Because, again, you have to have the 7 consecutive days of negative tests. So, if Kansas doesn't have their full complement of players, it just favors USC. I'm gonna have to lean towards USC in the bulk of my roster build out. So, I just it is, you don't want to count out Kansas, but I feel as though if you want to, if you're in a large field pool again, when you're talking 100, 150, 200 brackets or more, that's when you can start getting a little bit more creative of getting off of Gonzaga in the West. Outside of that, in terms of the matchups, I think it would be USC or Kansas to knock off the Zags, but that would be about the extent of it in this region. But moving on, Oregon VCU, really tight matchup. I would give the edge to Oregon, though the spread's also favoring them as well. But I just look at in terms of the overall skill set for Oregon, it does kind of fit into more of a build where you got Oregon making it through. The only other thing that I kind of worry about with Oregon is I don't necessarily think that they're that solid from a ball handling standpoint. And one of the things VCU is actually pretty good at is forcing turnovers. So they usually turn their opponents over at a clip of about 14% of their percentages, which is pretty much in near the top line. They're either first or second overall. I think it was them, Florida State, and maybe Georgia Tech. Don't have the exact percentages in front of me, but the VCU, very good defensively. That would be the concern for Oregon. If Oregon does get knocked off, I don't think VCU would be able to match up well against Iowa in that matchup. I think Oregon is a far better matchup against Iowa for an upset pick, but not nearly as much for VCU. So, again, you have to kind of balance out where you want to see your upsets and take your advantage there. The 215 matchup is Iowa Grand Canyon. Grand Canyon, first year in the Mountain West. I believe it was the Mountain West that they won out. But profile wise, just like kind of going through the numbers, Garza should be able to match up against the inferior competition here. So I would expect Iowa to get through. I just don't see Iowa getting past Oregon in the round of 32 and making it past the first weekend. So that's where I kind of pull back in a way, because I don't necessarily see Iowa getting into the Sweet 16. That's just the way I'm kind of looking at it. And again, in the bottom half, a lot of this kind of comes down to Kansas. If Kansas doesn't have their full complement of players, I think USC goes all the way to the Elite Eight to match up against Gonzaga. Could Gonzaga trip up before the Elite Eight? Really have a tough time seeing it. The matchups all point towards Gonzaga. There's no true team defensively that I think would slow down Gonzaga enough. Yeah, would Virginia tempo-wise be able to slow down Gonzaga? Yes, but I think Gonzaga shoots so well from an efficiency standpoint. I just don't see Virginia having the size to make life difficult for Gonzaga in the top half of the draw. So, like I said, I look at Gonzaga and I think this is pretty much their region to lose. And so even against USC, Kansas, maybe if Iowa does make the run to the Elite Eight to match against Gonzaga, I just don't see any of these teams having the repertoire to knock off Gonzaga. So that's where I'm kind of leaning towards. It's just as chalk as it may be, Gonzaga. If you want to pick an upset in the region, I would take UC Santa Barbara over Creighton in the 12-5 upset, but not much else there. You could take Missouri over Oklahoma. That's always splitting hairs, my opinion. And yeah, VCU could knock off Oregon, but I look at it as if Oregon falls in the first round, then it pretty much punches the ticket for Iowa to get into the Sweet 16. So that's kind of where I landed in the West region. So I'll leave things off there for now, and we'll get into the East region in the next podcast. So that's all for now. Take it easy, everyone.
Thanks for listening to the Fantasy Throwdown Podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and all other major outlets.